Thank you so much for inviting me to this talk. I'm really happy to be here and to be talking to you guys. So today, I'm going to be telling you a little bit about my path to becoming a data scientist, which is really a path from academia to the corporate world. So my presentation is pretty straightforward. At first, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, and then I will tell you about things that happened while I was in academia and on this path, what happened while I was on the hunt for the data scientist position, and a little bit about my first corporate position as a data scientist at Warner Media. And at the end, I'm going to give kind of a recap of what I have learned so far. And hopefully, even though throughout it, we're going to have time for question and answers, at the end also we'll have time for that. So I pretty much have a pretty strong mathematical background. I got my PhD in applied mathematics from North Carolina State University. And before that, I got my bachelor's degree on mathematics too from Morgan State University in Baltimore, Maryland. That's a HBCU, so an historically Black college and university. I am currently a lead data scientist at ADP. And I've been working there since 2021. And in my spare time, I do like to volunteer, and I volunteer for an organization called Athletics, where I'm the head of education. So with Athletics, what we are trying to do with our education program is to help the most vulnerable, the underrepresented group to gain economic independence through a data analytics bootcamp. But let me go ahead and tell you more actually about my own path, right? While I'm helping other people, I'm just now also going to tell you about my path. So pretty much when I learned about data science was when I actually finished my PhD and I was now on the job market. And, one of the jobs or area of interest that kept popping up for me was data science, right? So I decided that when I was going to go do my research while I was a professor at Morehouse College, I was going to focus my research on data science. So if a student wanted to work with me, it will have to be a data science project, right? So there are many things that I did while I was in academia to gain the skill set that I have gained over the years. The first thing, it was use personal development to gain those skills. So one thing that I did is I actually participated in a workshop at Brown University. The workshop was offered by ICERM, where they put together women from the corporate world and women from academia to work on data science project together. So when I did that, I was able to understand that, wow, okay, just looking at courses on Coursera and learning that way is probably not going to be the best way for me to do it. There's so much more that I needed to learn. So when I got back to Atlanta, I just decided to go on Meetup, and I just signed up for everything that was data related. If this event had data in it, I was just going, right? And while doing this is how I came about this bootcamp called Thinkful, which is the bootcamp that I did to be able to learn as much as possible about data science in a quick way, because I didn't want to go to school again. And also having to, build my own portfolio, which I'm going to talk about later. Again, as I said before, I was going to also use student advisement to learn about this data science field. So in the math department, when a student is graduating or about to graduate, is a senior, they have to do a senior seminar, which is basically having to do research in a very intense research in a particular area of mathematics. So my first senior seminar was called Classification with Supervector Machine. Here, the student was interested in prediction of the stock market. And we focused also part of our research on the separation theorem, which is basically how to separate hyperplane, put easily. Then the second senior seminar I was lucky enough to do was classification with random forest. So since this student was a ROTC student, he was interested in predicting the veteran potential to develop PTSD. And here we focus on the almost sure convergence theorem, which is basically the theorem that is used to prove that random forests are going to converge to the correct solution. Then I also was lucky enough to have a mathematical experience or research experience with freshmen, where we only worked on kind of like a applied statistics, data science project with the emphasis on the base rule. So those are the things that I did while I was in academia. But here, I also wanted to kind of talk about the machine learning technique, the things that I didn't know when I started this journey, but I got to learn, right? I think it's very important that when you even on your journey, right, when people come to me and ask me questions, I always tell them to figure out exactly what they want to do, what area of data science or data analytics, whatever, are you interested in? So when you talk about data science, you know that you have the supervised learning problem. A supervised learning problem is a problem where you pretty much, if I had to talk about it in a mathematical way, is like y is equal to mx plus b. And I already have my y, right? I have the y, the part of the function, and I have to create f of x. So the supervised learning problem, the kind of problem you can solve there, a regression problem, where you want to be able to predict the price of a house, right, in a particular market. Then you also have classification problem. With classification problem, like as this example show, you have a data set that contains information about people. Do they have a good score? Do they have a bad, poor credit score? And you want to be able to decide, okay, given this different kind of information that I have, I'm going to be able to tell you if this person is going to have a good, excellent, or fair score. Then you go into the unsupervised learning. So unsupervised learning is when you actually do not know the why at this moment. So the data set is kind of unstructured and you have to make sense out of it in a sense. So there's one problem that's like that is a clustering problem where you have a bunch of customers and you want to be able to identify and put them into segment so that you can basically send them targeted advertisement. Then you have natural language processing. Natural language processing is basically based off of words. So you want to be able to get information out of the words that you have. You can create topic models, you can create topic classification models and different things of the sort. And this is basically where I reside. So when I was learning all about data science and everything there is to it, when I discovered that natural language processing existed, I was like, okay, this is it. I do not care about the rest. I just want to work mostly on natural language processing problem. So while I was learning that, I was also building my portfolio. So I think that when you're building your portfolio, the one thing that is very important for you to do is to have interesting project on this particular portfolio. You also have to work on your resume because your resume is ever evolving, ever changing. You also have to have a social media presence. What do I mean by a social media presence in the world of data science, data analytics? Is basically having a GitHub account for data scientists, right? You have to have a GitHub account. You have to be able to be on Kaggle so that there, if you want, you can participate on a competition that they have there. You can go get data sets for there to work on your own projects, or you can look at somebody else's project and see how they have worked and find solution for a project to see if you can do something similar while you're on your journey of transition. Also, if you're someone who also likes to do visualization or data analysis, probably having a Tableau repository will be great so that people can go there and see what you have done. What are the visualization, the dashboard that you have created? Same with GitHub, they will go there and they can look at your code, look at what you have done, what are the projects that you have worked on. Lastly, it's very much important that you have a LinkedIn account because LinkedIn is going to be the place where you're going to be able to reach out to different people, talk to them, find out different things, right? And then, of course, most of the time I recommend to my mentee to have a Medium account because it's really good to be able to have somewhere where you can document your journey, right? Talk about what you have done, what you are learning, and share it on LinkedIn so people can maybe learn from it or maybe see some things that they can give you advice on. And lastly, if you want to go overboard, let's say, in this building of portfolio, you can actually create a website where you're going to be able to showcase your work. So your portfolio is something that's basically ever evolving, ever changing. You go on interview, you gain more knowledge and you update your resume. You go on interview, you talk to some person and they tell you this was not right. You update your Medium or your GitHub account, and like I said, again, Stack Overflow is your friend. So if there's something that you do not know while you are doing these things, usually you can find some answer or something close to it on Stack Overflow. Now, I want to go on and kind of talk about my personal projects, the project that I worked on while I was working on my portfolio. So here you will see a list of my actual projects that you will find on GitHub. The first one, it was predicting how late flights would be. Then I had a project where I was looking at the listings of Seattle Airbnb, and I wanted to be able to predict the ones that are available. Then I wanted to predict if I can find, predict the artist based off of the lyrics and different things of the sort. And as you can see there, once you look at my portfolio, you see that at one point, right, all of my projects just became all about words, right? If I had a way to make my project about words, I would do it. Okay, so I want to recommend hotels based on the reviews. I want to be able to predict the news article topic based on the article content, right? So everything just became about words. And I just want to mention that fourth one I have there because that's actually the last project. That's my final capstone from my from the bootcamp that I did. So basically after that, I didn't want to get rusty. So what I decided to do was to actually do another capstone on my own so that while I was going on an interview and talking to different people, I can still talk about, oh, here is another project that I'm doing. You can even go to my GitHub and find information about it. So I think that it's very much important that while you're on this journey, you continue to build your skills and make sure that you learn everything there is to learn. So I'm going to go ahead and stop here and ask if there are any questions.
Oh, there we go. We do have one, but it's not super relevant to what you just went over. So I think I'm going to save it for the end.
Okay, no problem. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue. So imagine that now I'm here, I basically done. I just wanted to talk about that. One of the reasons why I decided to transition from academia to the corporate world was just because I felt that when I was in academia, I wasn't challenged as much as I needed to be challenged, and I wasn't learning as much as I needed to learn. So I felt that the next best step for me would be to just go to the corporate world where I will be put in front of so many different problems and, just learn from those problems. So now I am now on the hunt for this data scientist position. So I think that when you are looking for a job, I think the first thing that you need to do is actually make a list of the top industries or companies that you are looking to work in, or you might admire, or you might like what they do. Now you also have to reach out to people who have the position. So let's say you want to be a data scientist, right? And your dream company is Airbnb. So you should go on LinkedIn and find a data scientist at Airbnb, or at least find 5 of them, and just go ahead and reach out to them. I think at least one of them will be able to have a virtual coffee chat with you so that you can understand a little bit about what are the requirements, what do I need to do to build my portfolio so that I can get that job at Airbnb. Also, I think it's very important to attend as many meetup, conferences, talks as possible in your field of interest. Once I realized that while I love data science, I'm more interested in natural language processing. If I saw a natural language processing talk anywhere, I would just go to it because there was so much I needed to know and still want to know about this field. Now, when you are not working, right, you are going to these conferences, you are going to the meetups or the virtual chats or whatever else, you have to make sure that you have a great 30-second pitch, because your pitch is basically the way that you're going to grab somebody's attention to make sure that they want to get to know you, they want to know more about you, right? My pitch, I actually have like 3 versions. I have a long version that starts in undergrad, I have a version that starts in grad school, and I have the version that starts when I was at Morehouse College. So depending on where I am, I just give my pitch and see where it goes. I think that you also have to make sure that you know how to describe your project as they're the most exciting and fun things ever. Because as someone who is transitioning, it's very much important that while you may not have the background that, somebody who had a master's in data science or things of the sort, you have to show your dedication and your passion. That's what's going to make you stand out. if you go to those networking events, just add everybody on LinkedIn. That's what I usually used to do. I'll just be like, let's add. And of course, I think that you should not be afraid to approach people. And one thing that I have actually done to kind of get rid of that kind of a block that I had was to actually go to event and job search with my friends. So I had a few friends who were also in the boot camp like me, or that I've met through networking, who were also looking for jobs. So if I was going to an event, I would just email them or Slack them and say, hey, do you want to come with me? And usually at least 1 or 2 people will be able to join me. So that was fun. So now you are networking, you are going different conferences, you finally got an interview. So how exactly are you going to work to make sure that you get what you're looking for? I think that the first thing that you have to do is just be yourself, being confident. Don't try to be whoever you think this company is looking for, because regardless, if they cannot accept you for who you are you even going to be able to flourish and be happy there? Also, you have to know how to answer the data scientist interview question. There are so many books out there, so many resources for you to know those data scientist interview questions. So it's very important that you know how to answer them, because at this moment, since you want to be in the field, you have to know those certain things, right? Now, one thing is that when you go on the interview, you are not going to be lucky enough that the first interview you go on, you're going to get accepted. So one way that I found to kind of deal with rejection or some company passing on me is to actually look at each interview as a training for the right position for me. So I'm actually just coming in front of you to just see what question you're going to ask me, how well I can answer those questions, and see if we match. If we match, great. If we don't match, okay, on to the next, okay? Because this is not the end of my life, and I just have to find the right team for me. If it's not you, it's going to be somebody else. So also really important, everybody knows about the STAR method. I usually use the STARS method just because I think for my personality, that works better. So again, the method is just that at the beginning of you answering a question about a project, you talk about the situation you were in, the task you were assigned to do, the action that you took, and the result that you obtained. Me, I like to add self-reflection to it, because there's usually something that you have learned while working on the project, right? There's some kind of, thing that you have to overcome. Maybe that's your self-reflection. And that shows to the employer or the recruiter in front of you that you are somebody who is always going to be able to learn and grow from the particular problems they are put in front of. Also, you have to be able to note the questions that you are being asked and you cannot answer. I think this is very important, because if someone looked at your resume and they said, okay, I'm going to ask you this question, that means someone else will also look at your resume and ask you that question. So if you couldn't answer it the first time, make sure that you can answer it the second time, the third time, and the fourth time. For instance, for some reason, I kept being asked about the formula of the sigmoid function. The first time I was asked, I was like, okay, why they're asking me this question? I didn't know this was going to be asked, but I went out and find out. Until this day, you can wake me up at night and ask me what's the sigmoid function formula. I'll be able to tell you. So at the end, of course, you should have questions for an interviewer, because as I said before, while they are interviewing you, you are also interviewing them, because you want to find the right match for you. So me, for instance, my first question is, what is the work-life balance in your team? That's because for me, while I absolutely love being a data scientist and working on the many different projects that I have been lucky enough to work on, I have other aspirations or other things that I do. And I want to be able to make sure that I have the time in my day or in my week to be able to accomplish those things. Also, sometimes, when I get, let's say, a company pass on me after I gave them a case study or something of the sort, I'll usually always actually email them and ask them if they have any kind of advice for me, things that they would think that I need to improve on. Sometimes people answer me, sometimes they don't, and I'll just take the feedback and improve myself for the next time. So, at this point, I also want to talk about reading and always feeding your brain. When I was a math professor, the one thing that I love to tell my students is that their brain is the most important part of their body, the most important muscle of their body. So they need to be always working on it. So pretty much what happened is that when I was going on interview, when they will pass on me, they will always tell me, oh, I think you do not have business acumen. I think that you are missing these different things. So I went to my network that have been building, right? And be like, okay, I don't understand. I keep being asked this question. So here are two books that were actually recommended to me and that I actually bought. And the one thing that was interesting is that when I was able to, get my first position at Warner Media, actually a few of my colleagues had the first book on their desk, Data Science for Business. So I was like, oh, okay, so my network did not tell me the wrong thing. So this is a book that I really need to know about. And then here are some other books that I actually have been using myself currently now in my position, in my data scientist in the corporate world life. And the first book is about network sciences, because I've been lucky enough to actually have to work on multiple projects that had to do with relationship. So one of my projects was about Twitter. Right now is about relationship to build an ontology. So, so all those things are very much important. So this first book has been basically my whole career. I've been using it. And of course, I've been working on deep learning models. So those books are very much important to me. So I'm going to go ahead and stop here and see if there's any more questions.
Yeah, so how did you overcome the corporate world's perspective that people in academia are clueless to the real world?
Oh, wow. That's the perspective that they had. I mean, I think that, like I said, the only thing that I saw was the data science, like, the business acumen. People in academia do not have the business acumen because, in academia, we are just excited to be doing research and we want to do research for as long as possible, right? And, and that will be the different aspect. I think that one thing that academics do not have and people in the corporate world have is that academics love to just go, for instance, when I work on project, I can go off on this tangent and then be like, okay, this is good, but let me try this other tangent over here. And then my manager then has to come in and say, okay, Melissa, I think you have already solved this problem. Let's move on. Let's get this, this model in production so we can move on to the next project. I would say that's probably one of the things that people in the corporate world will probably have the issue with academics, is that we just want to continue to explore the problems all the way to its end.
Okay, and then how do you refine the personal projects you focused on, and how did you stay motivated during this side work?
Okay, no problem. So how did I refine? Like I said before, when I discovered that NLP existed, then all my projects were just, how do I find a way to find NLP project? So like I said, one of my projects was about matching the lyrics to the artist, a predictor melody like that. And that was very fun because, you will figure out that, wow, there's so many things that you actually have to remove from the data set to clean the data set to be able to do this prediction. And of course, I think that the last project in my capstone, which was my last project while I was at the boot camp, actually that project was actually very fascinating to me. And that's actually the reason why I got my job at Warner Media, because the project was something that interested me, right? It was about how do you look at topics, at article contents, and you want to figure out what they're talking about without having to read the whole article as a whole. I was lucky enough that actually the article that I chose were articles that had to do with the 2016 election. So imagine now I'm in 2019 looking for this job and talking to this guy at Warner Media and telling him how it was so interesting to see the different topics that came up. And he was like, wow, I'm going to Washington tomorrow. You need to be with me because I need to talk to these people about the next project that we need to do. And that's why my first work actually was to predict Twitter bots by, on Twitter. So So that's why you have to just figure out what exactly you like and just go on and just look at the whole thing as just this great experience. And that's why I was saying, find a way to talk about your project as the most fun and exhilarating things ever, because that's the passion. That was my first big NLP project, but that's what landed me my job, because I was just so happy and in a sense happy to be working on something that excited me at the time.
Okay, perfect. And we have more questions, but I want to get through the rest of the presentation first, and they don't require context, so that's why we're going to wait for those at the end as well.
Okay, no problem. So now, as you can see here in this story, I'm on the hunt and I have finally got my position at Warner Media. So what exactly are you now going to do now that you're in the corporate world and you want to be able to succeed? I think that one thing that usually happens to most people, some people don't have this issue, but I actually had this issue, is to see that, oh my God, we didn't make the right decision by asking me to be here with them, because, I used to be a professor. I used to be with my student, have office hours and things like that. And here I am now with this big desk and they're asking me to work on the project. So I think that the first thing that you have to do is just acknowledge your feelings and share your feelings with people that you trust, right? Because there's no point for you to say, oops, I'm not having this issue when you are having it, right? I think also you have to find a way to accentuate the positive. This is what I wanted to do. And then, for instance, for me, one thing that I did to help me out, right, because it was very nerve-wracking to be there. And, because actually I was the only PhD on my team. I was the only data scientist on my team. So everybody was like, you're the smartest person here, therefore you have to solve the problem. So what I did actually was go back and just think about the fact that, okay, so they are just asking me to do a research project, and I know how to do research. I've been trained to do research, so I'm just going to be doing research. So when my manager came to me and said, okay, I want you to build this Twitter bot model. And I was like, okay, he wants me to do research on Twitter bots. That's what I'm going to work on. And that's how I went forward, right? And, you have to visualize yourself succeeding, because if you just think about how they're going to look at you and think you are stupid and things of the sort, you are not going to do the work. You are not going to be excited about it, right? You also have to seek out mentor, because sometimes there are some pitfalls, some things that are coming ahead and you don't know about it. So your mentor will be able to help you avoid those pitfalls. And one thing, as somebody who used to teach, I think that teaching or mentoring others is also another good way to get rid of your imposter syndrome, because you actually understand more when you are trying to explain it to someone else. And you're like, wow, I actually know what I'm talking about. And it makes you feel good, and it makes you feel like you can do it and continue forward on your path. Now, another way that I have done, because, networking is actually very much important for someone who is transitioning. And another way that I found to do networking in a more organic way is by volunteering. So I volunteer for this organization called Athletics. I talked about it earlier. At first, when I started in athletics, I was actually just participating on custom projects, which are just projects that we work on to help the different nonprofit in the Atlanta region. So I worked on it because I was just like, I want to work on different projects to learn, because I just wanted to learn as much. I was a sponge who just needed water, right? So I needed to learn as much as possible. But while there networking with those people, I was able to tell them about my own aspiration, how I love teaching and different things of the sort, so that when the opportunity for us to have an education program, they were like, okay, Melissa is always here talking about she loves teaching. Let's put her in charge of that. I also volunteer for an organization called Women in Data. And there I'm actually the community coordinator for the Atlanta chapter. So where we come together to help women in the Atlanta region to just have a place, a safe place, a safe space where they can talk about things that are not going right in their work or their data analyst or data science journey, or even celebrate a milestone that they have done. Of course, I love also mentoring actually with the women in data. And I look at mentoring actually as office hours. Okay, so the one thing that I miss the most about academia is actually having office hours or having meetings with my students when they are doing research. So mentoring for me is just another way, it's just a replacement for that. So I also wanted to kind of give you guys a list of some organizations that I think are very good for you if you're trying to network and learn as much as possible in this data science, data analytics fields. Some of them here are places where you can also volunteer and help to make those, our society better, like athletics or data science for good. There's also Data Kind. I didn't put it here, but that's also a very good organization. And a lot of other where you can go in and just listen to other people. I actually went to many different conferences in this list over here, and I cannot wait to go to more. So I'm going to go ahead now and talk about so you have transition, right? I have transition. I'm now in this world. What exactly am I trying to do here? What are my career goals? What is the roadmap I have for my life? Where do I want to be next year? Where do I want to be in 2 years? Where do I want to be in 20 years, right? So I actually already knew all of those things. And I think it's very important for you to figure out those things so that you can do the right things or put the right kind of stepstone to be able to get there. Me, I love to create. So I love to create vision boards. So this is actually my vision board for this year that I created. As you can see here, you have career training, you have women talking, you have some lady in her our work office. I work from home, so I want to have a beautiful work office. So one day I will have it. So I keep putting it on my vision board. And I also put goals. So here are some of my goals, some of the few of them, right, that I'm happy enough to share. And here actually some of the ones that I've actually already accomplished. So when I left academia, one of my first goals actually was that I wanted to be able to come back and teach a special topic course about something that I've learned through the corporate world. And I was lucky enough that at my alma mater at North Carolina State University, they, invited me to be a special topic course. I have a special topic course last year, and this year they gave me another opportunity to do that. So I'm now whoa, this is done. And then also, another one was to want to work with interns. While I was at Warner Media, I was lucky enough to always work with interns. All the interns usually always work with me. They were all from Georgia Tech, so they will always work with me. But at ADP, I haven't had that chance. So my manager said that this year it might be possible. So I'm already putting it as done, even though it's not, but I'm visualizing it happening. So I'm making it happen because I think it's very much important that you do those things and you figure out what is going to make you happy, what is going to make you grow as a person, as a data scientist, as a data analyst, or whatever else you want to be. Now, at the end here, I kind of want to talk about what I have learned so far, and that will be the end of this presentation for me, at least. So I want to kind of talk about the difference with the academia versus the corporate world. I think somebody asked that question before, and I was like, oops, it's actually in my presentation. So here is what I think is the difference. I think that, as I said before, academics are more interested in new discovery. We just want to go off on tangent and learn and learn and learn. In the corporate world, you have a new product, something that you need to deliver to the shareholders or to your business so that they can make money out of it. Now, you have the opportunity to be creative. Like I said, you can go off on different tangents and go to the rabbit hole, come back of that rabbit hole, go inside another one. You have that opportunity when you're in academia. Unfortunately, when you're in the corporate world, that is not the case because you have to work within constraints. A product has to be delivered at a particular point of time. There's no way that we're going to let you go off on different tangents on, it was 2019, the election starts in 2020. So by the end of 2019, I needed to have this model done. Like there's nothing I can do about that restriction on my work. Now, in academia, you have solo ownership of your code, meaning that you are basically usually the only one working on your code. While in the corporate world, many different people will be working on your code. You'll be sharing your code with this person, sharing with that person. This person will have this part of the code. This person will have another part of the code. Now, I want to talk about the strengths of academics and the strength of corporate people. So an academic is not afraid to tackle a new question. Like I said, when they told me, oh, now you have to create a Twitter bot model, I was just like, okay, that's fine. You just want to do research, right? This is how you will just switch your mind, because it's just automatic, because that's what you have been trained to do. That's what you do in academia. The corporate person will be agile in working with multiple stakeholders. Like if I have somebody from the business side or from the technical side and different places like that, people in corporate, they know how to switch the languages very quickly so that they can talk to these people and make them feel comfortable and get things done. Someone in academia is going to be more comfortable in the research and design settings, because that's basically how academia is. Now, the person who is in the corporate world will be someone who is very comfortable with a wide range of business requirements. Why am I saying that? Is that because in my team, one of my coworker will bring up a problem and another coworker will already know, okay, we need this other person, we need this other team and these different things for this one problem. I was like, wow, how did you figure out just by hearing the problem? So, and here I am still thinking other things, right? Like, so they have this ability because they have been there for a while and they kind of understand the jargon and understand what products are going to help with what very quickly. So that's why they can understand those things. Now, someone in academia is very independent. We work on our own. We don't really have other people that we can depend on, except, your advisor or your other people who are working under the same advisor. You can look at those people and maybe ask them advice, because you guys are working on the same similar project, right? In the corporate world, people are working within an established ecosystem. So they know what they're supposed to be doing. They know how things work in that system. Now, people in academia are very disciplined, but I think this is also the case for people in the corporate world. They probably need a lot of discipline with having to do things in a very short amount of time. But one thing that is very important, and I have noted about people in the corporate world, is that they're very collaborative. They like to work with other departments. They like to bring in people from other departments to work on the project together if they think that these people are going to help them. In academia, it's really very difficult to just go to another department and say, oh, yes, I want to maybe connect with you. Unless the student has a particular connection with a different department, it's just going to be very difficult for that to happen. Now, lastly, I want to kind of do a recap on everything that I've talked about. So what are basically those steps that you're going to have to do when you're transitioning? So before the transition, I think it's very important that you learn about the industry by speaking to practitioners. You can reach out to them on LinkedIn, or you can go to conferences. And if you see someone who has given a talk that's really interesting to you, just go to them and just be like, oh, yes, I would love to get you to pick your mind on this. What do you think about that? Now, you also have to identify your gaps, right? As you saw, I went to this workshop, and when I went there, I will realize, whoa, there's too many things that I have to learn, and there's no way I will be able to do it on my own. So I identified my gap, and I went out and I figured out what to do. I went on Meetup and signed up for everything, and then I registered. I paid for a boot camp. Then you have to identify your current skill and how you use them for your data science or analyst position. Why am I saying that? Is that because what you have already learned throughout your career, wherever you are coming from, even if you are just a student, those are things that are very important, that it can be used to your advantage. Make sure that you understand those skills and you understand how it can help you in the data science position or data analyst position. Me, I know how to teach others, right? So which means that when there's a complicated algorithm that's being used, I know exactly how are the words that I'm going to be using to explain to the business owner or the stakeholders, this is what this algorithm is doing in the easiest way for them to understand it without having to use big words, right? Now, after you do that, after you transition, it's important that you continue to network. As you can see, through my network, I was able to continue to fulfill the things that I absolutely love about teaching, right? Because really, teaching is probably more where I reside, but I need to pay my student loans. Therefore, that's another reason I had to transition. So you also have to volunteer to be able to grow your network and broaden your skill set, right? And at the end, find mentors. Make sure that you have people who will be able to tell you the right things that you need to do so that you avoid certain pitfalls in this journey, in this new world in the case for me, it was the corporate world, because I pretty much have been in academia all the time since I've been in the US, right? And then give yourself goals to achieve. When I was every single step of my life, I always had goals. So I think that those goals have actually helped me to get to where I am, because I knew this is what I had to accomplish. I had to figure out the ways to accomplish it. So I pretty much done. Here at the end, I just want to give you kind of like example of some of the projects that I worked on in the corporate world, as I call it. So here's some project that I worked on Warner Media. And as you can see there, the first one was a Twitter bot entropy detection model. Then at ADP, I've worked on classification problem, question answering system, topic modeling, topic classification. And if you see that, because I already knew my love was in NLP, right? Pretty much, I've been lucky enough that 2 of my big projects at Warner Media was NLP based, and at ADP, I mostly reside in the NLP space, and I absolutely adore it because it's just such a big space, and there's just so much that I still have to learn. So I'm enjoying myself and having fun in the meantime. So here are some references. I believe they will be sent out to you, and I'm done. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Melissa. And to really pound in the references, the slides will be available with the recording. So I know they weren't on the screen for that long, and you'll have access to them. So Melissa, we do have quite a few questions. So first, since you kind of wrapped up with your love of NLP and now doing it all the time at ADP, so what is it about NLP that is so fascinating to you?
Actually, NLP, so I will have to actually go back to grad school. So when I was in grad school, of course, my whole life was all about mathematics and nothing else, right? But I always tell that there are 2 things that made me survive grad school, not high school, but grad school. The first thing will be K-pop, because I just listen to K-pop a lot and watch a lot of Korean dramas. But the second thing, and the most important thing actually, was writing. So pretty much when I was in academia, in doing my PhD, my mind was filled with mathematics. And I think that my mind had kind of like overdose. It was not good enough. So I was able to, and the one way that I find to switch my mind was that in the weekend, from Friday to Sunday, I actually was writing a fan fiction. So which means that I was writing words and going into another world and kind of looking at those characters and be like, wow, this is such an incredible world that I didn't imagine as somebody who has been always in the math world. So that means that words to me, story to me, is my escape. So when I then discovered that there's a word side of data science, I was like, oh, wow, this is the place that I need to be. And, being able to just understand people's from their words, just like my first big NLP project was about the artist. And I was like, wow, I cannot believe that I can use this model and it will be able to tell me, yep, this song is from Eminem, this song is from 50 Cent, just using the words. So, or from Christina Aguilera, right? So I was just like, wow, this is just so fascinating. And, and I know that because of how I am, word is basically my escape and is actually my safe space. So I find a way in data science to have both words. I mean, my safe space, actually. So that's why.
Okay. And what type of portfolio projects do you feel are more marketable to potential employers? And they gave two types. Projects that solve business/industry problems and/or passion projects.
I will say that I will say passion project, because I'll probably always go with that, because I actually always follow my instinct. The reason why I became a mathematician is because I went to this intro to logic course and I fell in love with mathematics. I was like, oh, wow, this is exactly where I needed to be. So if something has to be done kind of like in a logical way or something like that, it's probably not for me. So I will say that passion project, because when I did that project about, predicting the topics based off of the US 2016 presidential election, I had no idea that actually I could go to CNN or something like that and market it. I had no idea. I was just like, wow, this is so interesting to me. Like, how can this model figure this out? How can I figure out everything that happened in the 2016 election just by looking at this data? That's what's passionate, that's what's fascinating to me. And I was lucky enough now that when I was talking about it, this person was like, oh, this is going to be helpful for my project, right? And I was like, oh, okay, so go ahead. So, I probably would say passion project, because you have, as someone who is transitioning, it's going to be somehow difficult for you to explain certain things and to be like a business person, but you can then reside in your passion and your love. And that will make them think, I know she might be off on some things, but she loves it so much, she'll figure it out, right? So that's what I would say personally.
Perfect. Sounds good. And then for making a GitHub account, what should we do to make sure our code is ready to post publicly beyond quality checks for accuracy? For example, I can verify that the code is correct and answers my question, but I don't know if the code is in the same style a more seasoned data scientist would write.
I think that if you are transitioning while you're trying to write like a seasoned data scientist, nobody will believe that you're a seasoned data scientist. They will just believe that you're a transitioner, someone who loves data science and who wants to get in the field. I think that what you need to do is make sure that your code has all the, like, for instance, my GitHub account, when you go there, you will see that I have explanation for everything that I'm doing. It's kind of like me going through everything there. And you have to make sure that you send in a code that doesn't have somewhere where it says, oh, cannot, it's like couldn't calculate, or, like it's blocked out because, you couldn't calculate it. Make sure that everything can be run smoothly. So somebody can download your notebook and put it on their own computer. If they have the data set, they will run it and will run perfectly. I think that's all you will need. We're just making sure that you are documenting everything you are doing, you are explaining what you're seeing. And that's probably what it is. I mean, when I looked at people, GitHub, that's just what I do. I said, I really don't care if it's written like the most perfect data scientist out there. It's like, do I understand what he's trying to do? Is it logical? Or is she trying to do? Is it logical? Do I see the answer? Is the accuracy? Did she interpret what she saw correctly? Then that's good enough for me.
I always forget to unmute myself. It happens constantly. So you kind of mentioned at the very end, when you switched from, I think it was Warner Media to ADP, but how did you switch from your first job in data science to your current one? And what is the difference in experience that you noticed relative to time when you transitioned from first from academia to corporate?
Yeah, so the reason why I actually transitioned, I went to ADP is because during COVID-19, the 2020, so pretty much when Warner Media merged everything together, my position was actually eliminated. So the position that I had was eliminated. So I basically had to find another job. And I told myself that I was going to try to find a job because, as I said, when I was at Warner Media, I was the only data scientist on my team. So I pretty much had nobody else I could ask questions to. Maybe some people in another team, the other data science people in some other team, but I had nobody else on my team. So when I transitioned, I then decided that I wanted to be in a team where there were more people who did the similar work that I did. So I have people to bounce ideas off of, because that's how I probably work better. The most productive is when I have somebody that I can talk to and like exchange ideas and think, okay, this could work, this could not work. So that's how it worked out, that transition. So, and how was the transition? I mean, I think it's different because I was in the data engineering team, being the only data scientist. So the only person I could talk to really was my manager about my ideas and the ways I wanted to solve the problem was my manager. Now on my current team, now I have other data scientists there who I can talk to, some people that I can also, mentor and be like, oh, do this, do that, and stuff like that. I think this could be the case. So, that's just how different it is.
Okay. And do you have any special advice for a mathematician having only done pure math research professionally? This person has been building toy models for Kaggle data sets and putting them on GitHub, but they're worried that these don't do a lot to change the academic look of their resume as they're not real.
I think that actually, why are you saying that it's not real? So I will say that, and this is something that I also tell my mentees who are trying to transition and they do not have such a great background, right? Like a pure mathematician, okay? You guys are doing the real mathematics out there. So the thing is that what you have to do, and this is what I tell them, is that you have to actually build a solid project, not a toy project, like you say, a toy model. No, go ahead and think about a project that you want to do from top to bottom. So figure out what is going to be my goals here. So basically, you look at this project like a research project, and you do all of those things, and you basically build your GitHub account. You have first the EDA part where you talk about the analysis. This is what I did. You also put the figures there. Oh, these are the figures. Oh, this histogram means this. This bar chart means that. Okay, then you go on. Okay, I'm gonna do this other part. Now I'm cleaning the data set. Now I'm doing this. Now I'm doing that. Now I'm trying to figure out the best model. Here I tried gradient boosting. Here I tried stochastic gradient descent. Then I think that this one is the best one for the problem that I'm trying to solve. And then I would then recommend that you actually make a presentation about it, and you are done. You have a great project that you can talk about it on with people that you can put on your actual resume. Me, all of the project that I did on my portfolio through the bootcamp, I put on my resume because I all build them just like a research project. So I just put them there because they were built that way. So I think that you just should work on projects that are actually like capstones, because that's how you're going to show how passionate you are about it, even though you're coming from the pure side of mathematics.
I have about 4 questions, 3 questions. One of them is asking about PowerPoint slides. We'll share it with the recording, and you'll find it on the webpage or in the YouTube description when we have that up and running. Next question is, have you had to transition between different sciences in this process? For example, like from structural engineering to data engineering?
Oh, no. I know my strong suit. Okay. So I'm someone who knows where she's strong at and she tries her best to stay there. So I think that the only thing that I've done that's pretty much outside of my wheelhouse or where I'm comfortable with is probably deployment in my team at ADP. And I was so happy to do it because that's something that I've never done before. And I thought that was a skill set that I needed to learn. And it's just maybe deployment, knowing where to put your main function, then your other functions have to be in this place over there, working with the IDE, which is like PyCharm. That's what I mostly use. So that's pretty much, but I then don't know where it lands, this part. It's probably data engineering, but I do not know how to scrape things off the internet. I do not like SQL at all. I don't want to find data at all. Just give me the data and let me work. But if you want me to push the model and to do those kind of deployment things, I can do those things. So, yeah.
That sounds good. So how strong of a programmer do you have to be a data scientist?
To be a data scientist, I think that you have to know how to code in Python or R, whichever one is your preferred one. I think people who do statistics love R, and other people just love Python. Me, myself, I prefer Python. So I think that you need to be good enough to know certain main things. But as I said, Stack Overflow is your friend, and Kaggle has a lot of things there. So I think that if you are good enough to be able to come up with something on your own, that's as good as you can get it. But if you want to be very good at it, you also can do it. But me, myself, I just say, get to your comfort zone. And then with more work, more project, you get better. That's how I did it myself personally.
And then final question before we end, and we're going to be a couple minutes over, but what is fun about your job? What do you enjoy?
What is fun about my job? Oh my God. What exactly is not fun about my job? I can tell those things, right? But what is fun about my job? I think that I really, one of the reasons why I became a mathematician is because I wanted to be able to solve as many problems as possible. And in order for me to do that, because I couldn't do engineering, was to become a mathematician. And what is fun is that every single time when I open my computer, I am actually just solving problems, right? Different problems. And like right now, I'm all in the embeddings world and doing this and that, and it's just so fun. And also I get the chance to read a lot of papers and try to do those things in the paper, so that's what's fun. I mean, I don't really, everything is fun in my job, so I don't know.
All right, well, thank you so much, Melissa, and thank you everyone for joining today.